Hello and welcome back everybody to the Foodbuild factory, where today we're going to take a look at the Exoskeleton. This is going to be a Berserkers heavy gunner, a bit of a silly build, but something I wanted to try for quite a while now. And as you can see here, we're going to use a power armor chassis, and I just feel like, wait a second, a little bit of a sneak peek this time around. Just had to swap in stabilized because I was outside of power armor, and as some of you may already know, yeah, getting outside of power armor and getting back in can mess with some of your perks. Also the reload related perks that give you faster reload speed. And back to the topic, this build is going to be interesting because what we're doing here is we are using a power armor chassis in order to get the benefits from the stabilized perk, in order to maximize our efficiency with the heavy guns. And also it comes with a few little benefits that help us with being a Berserkers character. Now, for those of you who don't know, a Berserkers character means that we're trying to get our damage resistance as low as possible in order to get the full benefit from our Berserkers effect, which is on our weapon. That gives us extra damage. On this occasion we're not quite full because the power armor chassis gives you like 2 damage resistance, I think it is. And yeah, it's a bit of a bummer because the 2 damage resistance already mess quite a bit with our Berserkers build. But we're talking about, I think I checked it, 5 points of damage that we're missing out on, but we're still getting a quite significant benefit. And yeah, it's a bit funny because you know, I did make some Berserkers builds, and most of the time, or I think so far every time I did it, I was using stealth, which pretty much negates all the problems you will have with a Berserkers build, because you're just trying to avoid getting hit all overall. So that means we're not suffering all that much from our low damage resistance. However, on this occasion, stealth is off the table. We're not using stealth to any capacity because we are in a power armor chassis after all, and we can't be sneaky. Also, we're using heavy guns which can't be suppressed, and what I wanted to do here is, yeah, just look how good we can get away with it. Now, one thing should be very obvious, and that is that there is no good reason at all to do this build. Like, it's just inferior to pretty much every other heavy gunner build, because yeah, even though we are getting a bit of a benefit from our power armor chassis, we're still far from being tanky. Alright, this is bad here. Alright, as you can see here, we can get swarmed quite easily, and on this occasion what happened, the main problem here was that we were getting irradiated so much, so we couldn't really heal off our damage. I tried to take a red away, but yeah, I wasn't fast enough. So, to be fair, I was pretty low on reactions here. I should have reacted earlier, so that was a bit of a mistake from my side. And yeah, as I said, you aren't tanky. However, the benefit that you have with a power armor chassis is that the moment you're putting on a power armor chassis, you're already getting a 40% damage reduction, which I'm not 100% sure if it's 40%, but from what I saw online, it should be about 40%. Now, damage reduction is different to damage resistance, meaning that it's just a flat reduction percentage based. So all incoming damage is reduced by 40%. Now, overall, damage reduction is what you want when you're going for a Berserkers character. There are some perks that do this also, but for example, we do have Lone Wanderer, which just reduces all your damage by 30% if you max it out, I think it is. So having 40% damage reduction is definitely pretty great. So as I said, and as you saw, it's not going to make it tanky in any capacity. You still have to be very cautious on how you approach certain situations. But overall, you can get away with quite some hits, and it makes up for an interesting gameplay. One thing's for certain, if you're seen like this, people will notice. Also, I use this Fastnacht skull mask, I think it's called skull mask, which works pretty well. What we're going for here is just, yeah, like some Dead Knight, some power armor, poltergeist or something. As I said, it's a pretty silly build. There's no good reason to go for it, but it can be fun. And yeah, after all, you don't have to do any maintenance on your armor, which, I mean, isn't that big of a benefit, because after all, you're not having to repair your power armor all that much. But it's a funny build. I do quite like it, and even though it has its limitations, it's actually fairly versatile. Your damage output is okay, nothing extremely out of the ordinary. Like, you can get the same benefits from a Junkies character, which further improves the point where I said that, yeah, you can just make a far superior build to this one. But it's definitely unique, and as you can see here, compared to other Berserkers characters, yeah, it could be worse. We can survive some hits, but after all, we do rely on quite a bit on stimpaks to keep us alive, so that's another thing to keep in mind. It was suggested to me in my latest Berserker build that I should try one without sneak, and more precise, some that uses auto stim effects. And what we're doing here is we're using Born Survivor. Now, as you just saw, Born Survivor procs at 30% for us. We have it at rank 2. I found that rank 1 at 20% is just a bit too dangerous, because after all, in situations where we get down to 20% health, we often are pretty much swarmed, and that can lead to problems, and enemies can just out damage our healing from the stimpak. So oftentimes when we are getting into the realms of 20% health, enemies can just kill us before our stimpak really heals us. Having 30% felt like a good way to go. You could even go for rank 3, wouldn't be all that bad. You're just burning through a little bit more stimpaks, however, that's just something you have to live with if you want to do this character. And what I was a little bit surprised when I did this, my initial approach was I wanted to use this power armor chassis, and I was thinking about if I can make it work, because as far as I remembered, I was under the impression that the power armor chassis had on its own 60 damage resistance and 60 energy resistance. I'm still pretty sure that that's the case, that was the case, like when the game launched. However, I was quite surprised to see that it's not the case anymore. Like, as you can see here, we can check that real quick. Yeah, we have 2 damage resistance, 2 energy resistance, and 100 radiation resistance. So that's an interesting thing here to keep in mind. I wanted to try something which is reducing our damage resistance with Medic's addiction or Psycho addiction, in order to get the full benefits of our Berserker's effect. However, something I didn't know up to this point, which I just found out trying this, is that if you reduce your damage resistance through one of these addictions, you can actually get into the minus. Like, you won't see it, however, it works like this when it comes to the Berserker's effect. I'm pretty glad there is no assault run on this occasion, because I was just devastated trying it last time when there was an assault run. So even though we do have the legendary perk that gives us a chance to heal damage when we're hit by energy damage, yeah, the fact that we don't have any damage energy resistance makes this pretty much redundant, because yeah, we're not healing faster than we are taking damage, so it doesn't work like that. Now, one thing to state is, as far as I know, energy resistance doesn't affect your Berserker's effect. So you could use the grounded mutation in order to get 100 energy resistance. It definitely wouldn't hurt. However, yeah, I want to use this character in the future, and I'm probably not gonna stick with this here playstyle, so I didn't want to bother to get the mutation, because after all, we have to deal with being flimsy, so it doesn't really matter if we have 100 energy resistance or not. I mean, it could make a difference, but for the purpose of this video, it's not going to be all that interesting. As you can see here though, we're pretty much playing as a standard heavy gunner, and yeah, as long as enemies come at you one at a time, you're not having that big of a problem, because we're also using the dodgy mutation, which further reduces our damage as long as we do have AP left. Problem is, when we're getting into the realms of multiple super mutants or anything, we will probably see that now at Huntersville. Once your AP is depleted, the damage you were taking is really more significant than it is anyways, so that's when it becomes dangerous. However, one thing that you gotta keep in mind is you can just play better. You know, like, player skill is often, something that's often overlooked when it comes to this game, but yeah, using cover, outpathing AI, these are things you can just do, so usually you don't have to bother, because if your build is good enough, you can just walk into enemies and don't have to bother with anything anymore. But that's not the case with this build. You definitely have to be cautious, you have to think about how you approach the situations, and there he is. And you have to react fast. Definitely the way to go here is to kill enemies before they can kill you, which sounds a bit simple, but it definitely helps to be a better player here. For example, on this occasion here, with the standard heavy gunner, you would just walk in here and kill everything, but yeah, we have to worry a little bit on how to approach the situation. We just don't want to walk completely into open field here. So what I'm doing here is I'm waiting here, let them come one at a time, and picking them off. Then, as you can see, damage is not exactly our problem. We are using a lot of bullets, but on a heavy gunner that should be expected. And yeah, bit of a retreat here, because that was actually a little bit too much. Getting shot by multiple enemies is definitely a way to kill yourself. And one thing I saw, I'm not sure if it's something about the 50 cal, however, usually if you are in power armor and enemies stagger you when you are in first person, you can still shoot along. However, on this occasion it doesn't really work. I'm not sure if it's something you need the power armor pieces for, or if it's something that's just happening with 50 cal. So keep that in mind. At mid-range this seems to work surprisingly well. So you have to shoot in little bursts to stay accurate. However, yeah, you can take down enemies quite quickly. I'm not having paid attention of what level this guy was, but I think it was level 60. So yeah, you can see, goes down fairly quickly. And yeah, after all, as I said like 3 times now, this is a silly build. However, it was fun. Was fun to play around with, and it just came to my mind because I was seeing a Berserkers 50 cal with faster reload for, what was it, I think 700 caps in a vendor. So yeah, I just went for it and tried it. I like the aesthetic of the build quite much. So I mean, the power armor chassis on its own is pretty ugly. However, I think with this fast tank mask together, it works weirdly well. And I also played it on a public server, and people at events really look at you like you're a madman, for obvious reasons. It's pretty obvious that you're doing something wrong. That's the thing. There are more serious builds coming in the near future. However, I wanted to make this like a little silly joke. It's fun though. So we're just now going to take a look at the Deathclaw over there, and maybe we'll kill the few super mutants at the back entrance of West Tech. But overall, I think you have an idea of how the weapon performs. I wouldn't really recommend doing daily ops with this or something, but after all, if you are willing to burn some stim packs, and if you are willing to have a bit more of a challenge, you can definitely do this for fun. Maybe if you get hands on some Berserkers heavy weapon, you can just try it, burn some ammo, and then switch over to a good build again. But yeah, definitely, I mean, it sounds stupid if you're talking like this about this build, but definitely the most tanky Berserker I played so far. Now, I'm sure there's ways to get more tanky, especially if you're considering legendary effects on broken armor pieces. So, for example, one thing I wanted to do for a while, but I'm still having to get the pieces together, is using a set of Cavalier, so you can just try to get everything right while sprinting and staying on the move all the time. But yeah, that's about it. Now, that was it in terms of gameplay. I hope you enjoyed it. As I said, don't take it too serious. It's one of the more silly builds, but let's get into the details. Now, here's the weapon, as I told, a Berserker's 50 cal with faster reload, and VETS crits do more damage. However, yeah, the VETS crits effect is pretty redundant for us. We're not using VETS at all, so obviously if you have access to something with faster fire rate or explosive, that would be better. Even limb damage would be better here. Yeah, VETS crits is just dead weight. However, for our needs it suited us very well, and let's take a look at our apparel. And yeah, this is going to be very quick because you can't see it. We have it equipped. It's just a bare bones power armor chassis. So there it is. Nothing to talk about. Pretty simple. And next thing we're going to take a look at are our mutations. As you can see here, we're suffering from two different diseases at the moment, but yeah, that's about it. And in terms of our mutations, we do have Adrenal Reaction, Carnivore, Marsupial, and Speed Demon. Now, really low-key here. Carnivore, Herbivore, you know the thrill, use whatever you like, it's just for buffs, which we didn't use at all in this video here, so it's pretty much redundant. Adrenal Reaction, now, I mean, we're healing off as soon as we're hitting 30% health. However, yeah, for obvious reasons we are at under 100% health pretty much all of the time, so Adrenal Reaction is pretty much always giving you a favor. I mean, more maximum HP would be nice also, however, I think it doesn't make that much of a difference unless you really invest into it with, we're talking about 15 base endurance with legendary endurance, maybe, and then you could make a difference. However, 50 HP won't make a world of a difference, and Speed Demon, Marsupial, well, pretty standard here. As I said during the video, one thing that could be very beneficial is the grounded mutation for giving you extra energy resistance. This could make it a bit easier, especially if you're going against super mutants, for example, where there's a mixture between ballistic and energy firing enemies. So you could negate a little bit of the incoming damage. However, overall, as long as there are enemies that have ballistic ammo or attacks, yeah, we have to survive that anyway, so no real point here. And onto our perks here. We do use 15 strength, traveling pharmacies here, master heavy gunner at rank 1, heavy gunner and expert heavy gunner at rank 3, bandolier at rank 2, and blocker. Now, blocker is really important. It's, I mean, I can't imagine any Berserkers build that runs without blocker, unless you're really that stealthy that you never get hit. But yeah, pretty obvious choice here, reducing incoming damage from melee attacks by 45%. It's something I said in the beginning of the video. Damage reduction, definitely always the better choice as damage resistance, especially on a build where we don't want any damage resistance. So bandolier, pretty straightforward weight reduction perk for ballistic ammo, which we are carrying a lot of. The heavy gunner perks are pretty self-explanatory here, and one thing that I have to mention is traveling pharmacy. Now, obviously, if you can live without it, get rid of it. You have to carry quite a few stimpaks here because, as I said, one big thing of keeping us alive is stimpaks. However, you can definitely get away with less traveling pharmacy, so maybe use rank 1, rank 2 and switch between heavy gunner perks here. But overall, I think, for example, the bare arms perk wouldn't be all that useful. Also, lock and load I find a bit of a waste because the reload is relatively fast on heavy weapons, so wasting 3 points on reloading faster is really something you should really only consider if you're min-maxing. Onto perception, we do have concentrated fire at rank 1 here. We're not using it at all. 1 rank of glow sight would be suitable, however, yeah, we have 1 perception, so just fill it with whatever you feel fitting here. Endurance is at a fairly low 8. I would like to have it higher for more HP, as I said earlier, but as for now we do have 8. This is just how the build works out for me. And we do have Life Giver at rank 3, Cola Nut at rank 2 and Fireproof. Now Cola Nut, yeah, it's just an additional way of healing yourself, so that's what I went for. Obviously you can go for Life Giver rank 4 and only 1 rank of Cola Nut. That would also be work very well. Fireproof, very important here because, yeah, reducing damage from explosions, pretty self-explanatory. Onto Charisma, we do have Lone Wanderer here, same as with Fireproof and Blocker, well, just flat damage reduction, very important. We want to stack as much of those perks as possible. Suppressor and Tenderizer. Tenderizer is pretty obvious, it's giving us more damage, which is useful, and on a fast firing weapon it's even more useful. And Suppressor, well, it gives you a little edge. When you're fighting tougher enemies, it really makes a difference if they do 20% less damage or not. So it's just here because what else should we pick? Onto intelligence, we have quite a lot of points into intelligence here. We do have first aid, which I think is very important because, as I said a few times now, stimpaks are keeping us alive. Batteries included for carrying all of our fusion cores. Gunsmith at rank 5 and stabilized at rank 3. Now if you can live without batteries included, maybe you're one of those persons who just carries like 3 to 5 fusion cores with them, use Nerd Rage. It's not active all that much, but in situations where we wanna have Born Survivor proc, we have a little bit of a safety net. If enemies out damage your healing, you can have a little bit of a safety net with Nerd Rage, maybe giving you a little bit more time to react and stack a few stimpaks. Gunsmith, pretty straightforward, reducing the rate of degradation on your weapons. And stabilized, well, more accuracy and more armor penetration means more damage that gets into our enemies, so that's pretty self-explanatory here. As I said, keep in mind though, if you're outside of power armor and re-entering it, you should re-equip stabilized. It can be broken. Onto agility, we do have Action Boy, Born Survivor, Adrenaline and Dodgy. Now, Born Survivor, pretty important here, I explained it quite a few times. Adrenaline just gives us more damage when we're in fights. Action Boy, a bit more AP refresh, which usually on a heavy gunner isn't all that important. However, it synergizes quite well with this here perk, Dodgy, which reduces incoming damage at the cost of action points. So as long as you have action points, you're taking less damage. The moment you're getting swarmed or getting hit by multiple enemies, this perk is pretty much redundant because once you are at low health, yeah, they're just chewing through it. So it only really helps when you're engaging enemies and you get single shots in from afar. So as long as you're going against single targets or slow hitting targets, the perk can be a great help. Just keep in mind, if someone shoots at you with a minigun or something, yeah, Dodgy won't be a big help. And onto luck, we do have Ricochet and Starch Genes. Starch Genes, pretty self-explanatory here. We want to keep our mutations even though we don't have a lot. And Ricochet is here to give us a little bit more damage reduction. 80% reduction from ranged attacks is nice. We're not looking for the damage we deal to others. That's pretty redundant. However, it can possibly synergize with Suppressor. I'm not quite sure. However, yeah, we just want to have less damage. And onto our legendary perks. It's pretty simple here. We do have 4 times. We're just boosting our special points here a little bit. 1 time we do have power armor reboot, which I'm quite let down by. I mean, it says 15% chance, and that's what you should expect. However, I only had it proc once during my whole time with this build, so yeah, sure, if you have higher ranks here, you could definitely see it, like it gets increased to 20% chance, but it's a lot of investment into something that I feel like doesn't work all that well or giving you all that big of a benefit, so I wouldn't recommend it. I was quite disappointed by it. However, electric absorption, this one's really nice because, yeah, it gives a chance to heal you when you're hit by energy attacks, so it just reduces the damage you're taking in a way. So therefore I wouldn't recommend running without it. But that's about it. I hope that you enjoyed the build. It was quite fun to play with it, definitely a bit more of a action-packed heavy gunner. And yeah, not sure what I did here, just wanted to look at the picture in order to get a thumbnail. So here it is, this exoskeleton, quite a nice idea that turned out to work fairly well. So overall, obviously I wouldn't recommend to do this build in order of power or anything, but it can be a fun time and you don't need a lot in order to make it right. So therefore I can just advise you to try it. It's fun. However, you're probably getting pretty fond of the look also in a few hours of gameplay. There's not a lot you can do. Like, obviously you can use different head pieces that work with it pretty well. The bone gas mask and such would also do a nice favor. However, I find that the size of the Fastnacht mask works quite well with power armor, and overall it's the first time I really did something with this skull mask, so therefore, yeah, that's about it. I hope you enjoyed the build. See you next time, guys. Bye.